Hi, I'm James Edwards. I'm a junior and my major is biological engineering.
My name is Emma Levna. I'm a junior industrial engineer.
My name is Miguel Migliori. I'm a senior in computer science.
My name is Creighton Smith, and I am a junior in biomedical engineering.
The purpose of our study was to get a better idea of the type and amount of writing that happens on a daily basis for an engineer. We hope that it would give a better understanding of the importance of the communication skills needed on the job, and we wanted to help ensure that students take the proper courses to prepare.
So for the professional that we chose, his name is Michael Lane. This is his picture right here. He's a chemical and process engineer, and he works for Lohr Corporation. He got his bachelor's degree in chemical engineering at NC State. And although he doesn't necessarily fit any of the fields of study that we're interested in on the team, we found that he does use communication a lot in the workplace, so we found him a worthy candidate in order to interview. So as far as the methods that we used in order to set up and actually host the interview, I made sure to actually call the interviewee first, the candidate, to set up a time, location, and date where he was available. And I made sure that it was in a comfortable environment for him. We also, as far as setting up the questions, we incorporated components of both structured and unstructured interviews, in the sense of which structured is predetermined questions that our team was able to make up. We had 5 questions from the CIW report and 3 questions that we made up as a team. Luckily, I had some background knowledge of my friend already, of the professional that we interviewed, and from that we were able to actually construct questions that were more applicable to his actual work. And as far as unstructured, I made sure that this was a very informal interview. I didn't want to stress him out too much. I wanted to make sure he was in a comfortable environment. It was casual. If he felt, if I felt that like some of his answers were a little bit vague, I made sure that he could elaborate on those in order to answer the questions that we needed. I also made sure that conversation was key throughout the interview. I didn't want to make it seem that it was just, I just wanted him to answer the questions, get in and get out. So I looked for examples throughout hosting this interview. I made sure that, he was covering all facets of his actual workplace and make sure that we could actually learn about his communication in the workplace.
So from our interview, we learned that writing is essential. Even as an engineer, writing is important. The most common form of writing that this engineer does is something known as a summary document, where he basically summarizes all the important details of any given project he may be working on. Collaborative writing is also an important part of this professional's job, where he works with other engineers and other professionals within the company to produce lengthier documents that provide in-depth details for every part of the project.
From our interview, we learned that the writing skills that the professional uses were learned while he was on the job, but the basis of his writing, basically the grammar, was obtained from his college classes. We also learned that over time, technology has changed, and it has changed the way that engineers communicate. And now he uses more of instant messaging instead of emails, just because it's quicker and it's easier to use. We also learned that in-person communication is another key form of communication in the engineering world, because they need to speak face-to-face, show each other certain processes, because it's easier to do that and you're able to monitor the people that you're teaching. And also we learned that our professional constantly reads new reports on new materials or new research that's being done in his field, so he can apply that to his job. And the last thing that we covered was difficulties in communication while you're at work. And one of the big ones is just scheduling. A lot of times they have to go from phone conferences to emails to just an individual phone call based on who they need to talk to and when they're available. And also another problem that arises is gender, age, and pay. Usually older members of a team don't want to listen to a younger member as much because they're intimidated by the young person's inability to know new things. And gender is also a problem because men usually don't respect women as much. And pay is also another thing. Usually people of lower pay don't want to listen to people of higher pay because they don't think they deserve it sometimes.
What we found through our interview pretty much matched identically to what was reported in the CIW report. The most common forms of communication were in-person, one-on-one demonstrations, or just talking through the process, or via email if they are different locations, etc. One of the most interesting points that we found was while Mr. Lane spends less of his time on a weekly basis writing than most engineers, he spends 5% more of his time collaboratively writing. He spends about 25% of his time a week collaboratively writing, where most engineers only spend about 20. Also, similarly, Mr. Lane says that writing is essential for his job effectiveness and any opportunities for career advancement.
In conclusion, an engineer's written work is a fundamental component for success. In technical fields like engineering, it's important to have innovative and creative ideas, and written work and other forms of communication help engineers to share ideas with one another and ultimately solve problems. Our professional told us that in-person communication is the most effective form of communication, especially when discussing processes or complex details. However, it's not always possible to communicate in person due to people being in different locations. So email and phone calls are really the most common forms of communication, basically because they're quick and easy and very effective. And finally, we think that this information is valuable for any student in engineering or any other technical field, and will help them prepare for a job they may have in the future.
So these are our sources. We got the 2 pictures of the graph from the CIW report, and we got a picture of Mr. Lane from his Facebook page. Thank you all for listening. We want to thank Mr. Lane for his time helping us with this project. Have a great day.